Hello and welcome to episode 13 of MMO Weekly, presented as always by MetsMerizedOnline.com. I'm your host, Sal Manzo, and we're joined by a very special guest this week, voice of the Mets radio, Wayne Randazzo. Wayne, thanks so much for coming on the show again with us.
Hi, Sal. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You had a busy couple of days here with the Yankees, a good couple of days, so we'll jump right into it. I just want to get your first reactions from the two-game sweep there. Things you liked, things you saw. It was a great couple of games, so just want to get your thoughts there out of the gate.
Yeah, I mean, fun atmospheres at City Field. Two sold-out crowds, two electric atmospheres, and the Mets really responded well. I think maybe some teams in the past give up back-to-back homers in the first inning like that, and maybe they go away for the night. But Mets punched right back. They scored 4 runs in the bottom of the first. They held on the rest of the way. And then game 2, it's really Scherzer's show for a lot of it. 7 shutout innings from him. The Mets gave up the lead, but then again fought right back to win it in the bottom of the ninth. This is a good team, and they were able to go up against a team that's also very good in the Yankees, a team that entered with the best record in baseball, and they more than held their own against them. So the Mets feel like they're in a good spot, and this was a good performance for them in front of big crowds and to really energize their portion of the city and to energize the Mets fans in a way that beating the Yankees can do. So it was a good series, 2 heavyweights, 2 teams that are certainly going to be playing in October, and the Mets show that they belong on any stage right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you kind of touched on it as far as at least game 1, how they got in the early 2-0 hole there in the first of back-to-back homers. And, teams like that in the past you've mentioned, they kind of, would roll over and that would be the end of it. But that game, reminded me a lot of 2006, game 1 of a Subway Series at Shea. They fell behind early, came back, clawed their way, had a nice, end there. Obviously, it was a little bit more of a blowout in the first game, but it just seems like they never feel like they're out of it. The Mets offense, I know they've been scuffling a bit, but it seems like guys seem to really pick each other up. And I don't know if you feel this way, but it seems like some of the guys, get up for this series, especially some of the newer players, new with the rivalry, or at least they believe it's a rivalry. Maybe it will be now, but it just seems like there's a different tone, like you said, as far as, this team doesn't think that they're out of it, and they don't really care that who's in front of them because they feel like they're always, going to be able to fight their way out of it.
Yeah, I mean, they're a really good team, and I think that Max Scherzer really sets the tone in some ways when it comes to embracing the environment and being able to rise up in a big moment on a big stage. That's what Max is all about, really, and he's been able to permeate that through the rest of the locker room. Eduardo Escobar mentioned how he thought it was a World Series environment. It was as electric of an environment as he's ever played in his long 10-year big league career. So a testament to that. I think the guys are able to handle the big moments and big stages, and they like it. They don't shy away from it, and I think we saw that over these last 2 games. And now they're going to go to Miami, where it's going to be really an opposite environment. It's going to be in some ways a big step down from what they just went through. So we'll see how they handle that because it's going to be a lot different. You hope that they can just transition through. I mean, they're smooth, they're professional, and it seems like they can play at any stage in any place at any time and handle themselves the right way. So I think this team has earned the belief of the fan base, and it should be a fun last couple of months leading to the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on Scherzer a little bit, but obviously, birthday boy yesterday, I think in his career, he's got like a sub-1 ERA, and I forget how many starts on his birthday. It's pretty amazing. But, I just want to get, your thoughts on, everyone knows it seems like now that Scherzer's been here, the environment's different, the overall look of the team and just kind of like how they feel. Do you think, a lot of that has to do with his presence and his winning attitude, or is it just, a lot of the veteran players in general that they brought in that's kind of patched that together? I'm just kind of curious there because, obviously seeing Scherzer in the dugout after striking out just in the 7th, high fives everywhere, powwows with the pitchers. It just seems like there's a totally, different vibe in the clubhouse, so to speak, with a guy like Scherzer there. And it seems like it's made an immediate impact on both sides.
Yeah, I think the Mets spent a lot of time and effort and money to really bring in guys who were going to be leaders in the clubhouse. Scherzer was not only brought in for his pitching ability because of what a teammate he is and how he can really lead. Eduardo Escobar was brought in because he's a clubhouse-oriented type of guy, a guy who brings people together. Mark Canha, polished and respected and a veteran presence. Same for Chris Bassett, a true professional. Same for Starling Marte, who has come in and really helped be a leader as well, and a guy that the players really admire and respect his talents. And Marte's had a tremendous year. These are all good players they brought in that were good on the field and good inside the clubhouse. I think that was meant to be done by the Mets. It was purposeful, and it's worked. And I think in Scherzer's case in particular, he's just really team oriented. For as good as he is individually, he wants to win. He wants to help his teammates get better so that they can help the team win. And I think Max has helped a lot of guys, not just himself, to have really good seasons to this point. And we've seen it with the results of this team now that they're 24 games above 500. They're a few games up in the division, and they seem like they are really poised to continue forward with how they've played and finish strong. What is still 65, 66 games to go.
Absolutely. And I know Scherzer made the comment yesterday, being his 38th birthday, said he feels more like 28 than 38. Obviously bring a guy like him in here on the deal that you got because you're trying to get maximum, value and performance. But are you surprised at all, just kind of at his age? And, you had the lockout, he was dealing with representing on the players' side, so many different things. And even, kind of the injury he had to the oblique, the last 8 weeks before all this. Surprised just how dominant he's been out of the gate since he's put on a Met uniform, or is this just par for the course the guy just expected?
Yeah, this is who he is, really. I think it would have been a surprise if this didn't happen the way it did. And sure, there's a lot of reasons or excuses that could be made of why a player might not have a good season, but that's not really in Scherzer's DNA. He wants to give the maximum performance. And if anything, maybe you look at that oblique injury as a blessing in disguise as you go forward here, because maybe the Mets, Scherzer kind of had a problem with a dead arm toward the end of the season. He didn't feel great in October. Maybe this kind of helps him get through a longer year. Maybe this keeps him strong at the finish line at 38 years old to go through some injuries this year and keep him off the field and keep him from throwing at his normal pace. So, maybe at the end he looks back on it and says, those 6 or 7 weeks actually kept me strong. So we'll see. But I think either way, Scherzer's going to give you all he has. You look around at some of the great pitchers in history, which Scherzer certainly is, and guys who stayed good into their later stages in their careers. And right now we're seeing one in the American League. Justin Verlander's doing it at 39 years old, coming off of Tommy John surgeries, having one of his best seasons. So, these guys who are the greats know how to stay great, know how to get people out. Is Scherzer the same pitcher that he was 5 years ago? Maybe not. But he mostly still has the tenacity that he always has had. He still has great stuff, and he's still able to get hitters out at a high rate. I mean, he was able to execute a great game plan last night. You saw what he wanted to do against Aaron Judge. Mm-hmm. Struck him out 3 times, kept the ball down and away, and Scherzer really able to pinpoint what he wants to do. I mentioned that on the broadcast last night, how at the All-Star game you heard some pitchers mic'd up saying where they wanted to put the ball. And they didn't often put the ball in that place. And we're talking about all-star pitchers pitching in the all-star game, not able to pinpoint exactly where they want to throw it, missing their spots or missing in a different location than where they wanted. And it just doesn't seem like Scherzer does that very often. He puts the ball where he wants to. And it sounds easy, but it's extremely difficult. And it's what separates the great pitchers from the good ones or the ones who aren't as good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was, you took that right out of my mouth there. Just the matchup between Scherzer and Judge, alone was worth the price of admission, I'd say, yesterday. And to that point, it's great to watch a pitcher like him. I use the word stubborn, but in a good way, to his game plan. And you saw that with Judge. He didn't give in at all. He knew what he wanted to do, and being able to execute like that, like you said, it's so difficult in theory. Pitchers should be able to do that, but that's what makes Scherzer one of the all-time greats. He could put it where he wants, and that was just kind of a clinic. That was really awesome to see. But I wanted to move on a little bit from Scherzer, who's pitched, to the other Mets ace that seems to be back on the mend, Jacob DeGrom. Obviously had a rehab start as well yesterday, and it sounds like the next start he makes is going to be for the big league club. I was just wondering if you had anything as far as, when we think we're going to see DeGrom in that next term in the rotation, and what the kind of maybe we should expect, with the 2-time Cy Young Award winner here now in the later stages of the summer.
Yeah, it sounds like the plan is to have DeGrom make his next start in the big leagues. I would guess it would be in Washington. Maybe Monday or Tuesday, because I think they would also then want him to pitch against the Braves in that big
Mhm.
series that's coming up next weekend. Don't forget the Mets and Braves have a 5-game series coming up at Citi Field. I mean, for as fun as the Subway Series was, and bragging rights or what have you between the Mets and Yankees fans, I mean, what you're really playing for is the division title and the spot in the postseason. And the Mets and Braves have 5 games against each other at Citi Field starting next Thursday. So I'm sure they want DeGrom involved in the rotation for that series. So that would mean if he pitches Monday or Tuesday against Washington, that he should be able to pitch Saturday or Sunday against the Braves. Saturday's a doubleheader. I know they would like David Peterson to pitch one of those doubleheader games too. So I think the Mets are really looking at moving forward here by having both Scherzer and DeGrom face the Braves as part of that 5-game series, and try to at least win 3 out of those 5, if not 4 out of those 5, and maybe create a little bit of distance in the National League East. It's there for the taking, and then there's not too long after that a 4-game series in Atlanta. So
Right.
9 games in 2 weeks, and I'm sure the Mets would like Scherzer and DeGrom to pitch in both of those series.
Yeah, and it feels like everyone's waiting forever to see that whole, back to back to Scherzer, DeGrom, back to back starts there. But once DeGrom does come back, do you think that it's going to be more of a, maybe like a 5 innings, 80 pitches kind of thing? I know they probably want to bring him back a little bit slowly once he's even up here, and probably going to be like that way till, I would think, maybe till the end of the regular season. Just obviously speculating, but I'm just worried curious what you think as far as when you think that that the time frame that they'll, so to speak, let the reins off and kind of let him eat and have no really limits. I was wondering if you had anything that you thought about that, because I would assume, like I said, they're probably going to be careful with him for once he's back, but at some point the postseason's coming sooner than later, and you're going to want your horses to kind of ride it out. So I'm just curious there.
Yeah, I mean the playoffs are still more than 2 months away. You really have time to get DeGrom to where you want him to be for that. But yeah, when he comes back, he's going to certainly have his pitch limits, and he threw 67 pitches in the rehab start yesterday, so you could expect him to be around 75 pitches or so in about 5 innings, I would imagine, for his first major league start, and then they'll extend him beyond that as they go along. By the time he gets to 7 innings and 100 pitches, might be 2, 3, or 4 starts in to the season. But I think the Mets will be just happy to have him pitch any innings at all, and allow him to go deeper into games as it comes. And I think they're satisfied with where Jake is right now. And as long as nothing pops up in the next day or two, I think he'll be ready to go to pitch in the big leagues.
That's great to hear. I know everyone's kind of holding their breath because we've, heard that. Everyone's heard that a lot, waiting to see how he feels. But hopefully, like you said, this time the next start will be in a Mets uniform, and whatever they get from him, it's better than, pretty much anything else, because it's, it's Jacob deGrom, and it's always a plus there. You mentioned David Peterson, possibly in that doubleheader against the Braves could start one of those. Obviously, he pitched the 8th inning last night with not great results. I was curious kind of what you thought about the move. Was it more on Buck as far as making that, decision to do that, or in the sense of it really just shows that the Mets, need another, bullpen arm or two, so to speak, in the back end to kind of, get them through these next couple of months into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think either way they know they need another bullpen arm. Really, I thought Seth Lugo looked maybe the best he's looked all year yesterday against the Yankees. Which if you get the Seth Lugo that the Mets had over the last
Right.
few seasons, for the second half of this year in the stretch run, well, then all of a sudden your bullpen looks a lot better anyway. I think they're counting on Trevor May to get some big outs when he comes back, which should be soon. And as far as Peterson, look, Peterson's role, if he's going to have one in October, is going to be in the bullpen. So
Right.
you need to see what that looks like now. You need to see not only how he looks coming out of the bullpen and what the results are like, but you need to see how you can make him better out of the bullpen. Peterson has good stuff. We've seen it. He's been able to get hitters out at the major league level pretty consistently this year as a starting pitcher. How can they transfer that to making him a good relief pitcher for when they need that is something they need to work on. So it was instructive in any way, no matter what happened yesterday with Peterson, how he did with 2 lefties coming up. The Yankees were in a spot in the order where they had 2 of their 3 hitters due up as left-handed, which the Mets are hoping Peterson can get those guys out. He walked Rizzo, and I think that's something that has plagued Peterson even as a starter, is that sometimes he doesn't attack the strike zone. So they're going to have to work with him on that. And then he threw a pitch that Gleyber Torres got up and hit it out. It was just a fastball that caught some of the plate, and Torres squared it up enough to right field to get it out. Wasn't like Torres was all over it. I mean, kind of was late and still got enough to get it out. So, I think and then Peterson came back and struck out the next guy. So I think they need to know what's what for David as far as what it looks like for him to pitch out of the bullpen in case they need him to be that guy in October. We don't know what the trade deadline is going to bring. I would imagine they'll get at least one reliever, but they could probably use two.
Right.
Also Tyler McGill is going to factor in some way, I think, down the stretch as a reliever as well. So they're going to have a couple guys who we've seen getting used to as starters in McGill and Peterson. Try to probably get hitters out of the bullpen in October. And I think what their bullpen is going to look like in September and October is a lot different than what we've seen this year with the possible additions of May, McGill, Peterson, whoever they bring in at the trade deadline. Maybe Lugo's turned a corner. And I think the bullpen will look really drastically different than what we've seen from April to this point.
Definitely. And I agree with Lugo there. And it's interesting, he pitched multiple innings yesterday, which is something he used to do, pitch every couple of days, but multiple innings, something he'd be successful with. And it seems like maybe if they can get another arm or two, maybe can do that with Lugo, get back to that and be successful. But I guess another question that I have, as far as with the bullpen, then obviously they traded for Daniel Vogelbach the other day, and they gave up Colin Holderman in that deal. Did that make sense in the sense of, trading away an asset in a bullpen arm that's controllable for a player that, listen, he's done pretty well. Obviously, I think he's 5 for 8 since he's joined the Mets, obviously. But kind of besides this year, middle of the road bat, obviously more pop than they've had in the DH spot than, all year really, besides Alonso, which I understand. But I'm just kind of curious what you thought about that move and, taking away from a strength in the sense of, a bullpen arm that's been rather successful and probably doesn't cost you much and is, a lot of control for a player that, in all intents and purposes, you would assume that they're going to continue to upgrade, at least, in the lineup, and a player like Vogelbach would, potentially become a bench piece. So I'm just kind of curious what you thought with that move there. And, if it was a little, precautionary, or maybe, just in case, insurance till, I guess, August 2nd, till maybe they can get some more reinforcements.
Yeah, I think it just because it goes back to what I was saying. The bullpen is going to look a lot different, and
Right.
You're going to add a bunch of guys that you haven't counted on at all, and I think that makes Holderman a little bit more expendable. I still don't think it was a guy that they necessarily wanted to move. I don't think they were looking to make that deal to trade Colin Holderman.
Right.
But you do have to give something up to get something, and the Mets have had really very little success in their DH role this year, especially from the left side. Robinson Cano didn't give them much. Dominic Smith has not hit. So they need something from the left side of the plate. They do need a little bit more power, for a team that grinds out at bats and gets a lot of hits and draws a lot of walks. And Vogelbach draws a lot of walks too. They still need someone who can hit a home run every once in a while, and they don't have many guys who can do that. So to have Danny Vogelbach in there, I think will help that. From the left side of the plate, maybe they make another move here to reinforce the right side of the plate from the DH role, because again, JD Davis has not given you a ton this year either. So maybe they'll make a move there. But even if they don't, I think they felt like that with the way the bullpen will likely look down the stretch, that they could get away with trading Holderman, and that was the way they decided to go to get Vogelbach, who I think was a bat that they really felt like they needed, and they probably, again, could still use another bat to upgrade their lineup and make their lineup just a bit more formidable, especially in the power department going down the stretch.
Yeah, definitely. Before I get into kind of the trade deadline, some guys I just want to get your thoughts on, talking about power. One guy that's had it this year is Pete Alonso. I just want to, get your thoughts on what it's like to watch him, mature into the player that he's come into, from a slugger, obviously his rookie year, breaking the rookie home run record. Good year last year, but now just to, an MVP candidate and, one of the best sluggers in the game. So I'm just curious what it's been like to watch his maturation process and, just get your thoughts on that a little bit.
Yeah, Pete's really turned into a good hitter, and I think that we've seen him take his base hits to right field more and more this year. Not exactly try to hit home runs or try to do too much in a certain situation. It's one thing to have the power that he has shown, but his batting average has remained pretty high this year. He's really come into his own in clutch situations. Obviously, the RBIs stand out. He's got the most in the major leagues, and very likely will set the Mets record this year. He's only 40 away from tying it. And, how many games are left? If he only breaks that record by 1 or 2, it would probably be a pretty disappointing finish for Alonso, and he'd still end up with 125 RBIs or so.
Right.
So he's really put himself on a path to drive in a lot of runs, to have a historic season for the Mets in that regard, as far as being a run producer. Another home run last night. He had a walk-off homer earlier this year against the Cardinals. It seems like the power comes in big moments too for Pete, which is a great thing to see. He pays a lot of attention to his defense. Without Dom around, I think Pete's going to have more defensive responsibilities at first base. I don't know that Vogelbach is going to play much first as he has in the past, but I think that the Mets are happy with where Alonso has come from. I think he's learned a lot as a hitter. I think Eric Chavez has made a lot of sense to Alonso, and I think Eric's done a really good job as the hitting coach this year. And they've kind of gotten Alonso to think about, not necessarily drawing more walks, but where his on-base percentage should be to be considered an MVP candidate, which I think Pete wants to be. If you think about guys like Paul Goldschmidt or Nolan Arenado or Mike Trout or Bryce Harper, guys who get on base at a high clip to go along with their power, those are the guys who end up being MVPs. It's not the guys, like Schwarber or some of these other sluggers that you could think of that only hit home runs and don't get base hits and draw walks. The guys who are the total package are the ones who get the MVP consideration. So I think they've kind of told that to Pete, and it's really connected with him, and he's been able to make the adjustments he's needed to get on base more and to have a higher batting average and still keep his power where he wants it. So I think Alonso's had a really great year, and I think he's really become a true middle of the order bat and a guy this team really can't live without as far as being in the middle of that order.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, to your point, he also, I think, sees some of the fewest pitches within the strike zone of any hitters in baseball. So to be able to be that selective, get the on base up, but also still driving the ball like you're talking about, it's really special. And, give him credit and give the coaching staff credit as well. Another player real quick I just wanted to talk about was Francisco Lindor. He had another 2-out RBI last night. Just want to get your thoughts on him quick. Finally looks, comfortable in New York, after, last year. Seems like a really good leader. Is so vocal with the guys and keeps everyone up. I just wanted to get your thoughts on his second year as a Met and, his performance so far.
Yeah, I think Lindor, I think what he's really done this season has been based on his durability. He's played just about every game. He's played a very good shortstop just about every game. You watch him defensively and he makes every play. He gets to a lot of the balls. He's developed a good rapport with turning double plays, whether it's Luis Guillorme at second base or Jeff McNeil. I think Lindor has really shown his value with regard to being an everyday shortstop in the major leagues. And, I think his bat has been there for the most part. I think there's some inconsistencies still with him hitting for average, but as far as being in that third spot in the order every day, he's in there. He's driving in a lot of runs, getting a lot of opportunities to do so with how Marte and Nimmo have played. And there's been some power too. He's hit 16 home runs, the second most on the team. So he's been a valuable player for them this year. I don't know that he's been a superstar elite player this year, but I think for what the Mets need from him, he's at least answered the bell. And have we seen is this his best season as a Met? I don't know. I think that there's probably more in there. Still for Lindor. He's still in his late 20s. He's still someone that I think could have some really good seasons ahead. And he's had a pretty good year this year. And, we'll see what comes of it over the last 2 months. Remember how strongly he finished last year. If there's a month like that that's still ahead this year, the numbers at the end of the season could look really great for Lindor. So it's going to be fun to watch him, finish this season. He's got a lot of playoff experience. He's played in some big games for Cleveland in the past, and I'm sure the Mets will be happy to have that experience once they get to October this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said there, postseason experience. He's been a good leader. Like what we've seen so far. And like you said, if he can get super hot like he did last September, and if that happens getting into October, good luck everybody else. That would be great. But I just want to move on from the players on the Mets to, players that could be, acquired at the trade deadline here in the next week or so. I was just curious what you think. Any names, any position, positions that you think that the Mets will be looking like at the trade deadline. What you think it'll, August 3rd, what you think it could, as far as the acquisitions could look like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting time of the year. The trades seem to be happening pretty late. Finally, the Yankees made one last night, getting Benintendi from the Royals. Really, the Kickstarter to trade season. Feels like nothing really has happened until that. So that's a move that you hope kind of starts the market a little bit. Teams are waiting more and more, especially with this new playoff spot added this year. More teams feel like they might be in it.
Mhm.
Curious to see what the Orioles do with Trey Mancini, because they're kind of in it now in the American League wild card race. Does that motivate them to keep a guy like Mancini, or do they still move forward with their plan, knowing that they're maybe no better than just a wild card team and an early playoff exit this year? How does that look for some of these teams that could be in it? So it'll be an interesting few days here as teams sort that out, and the market kind of shows itself. We know the Reds and A's are going to be sellers, and they both have a starting pitcher to deal with, Castillo on the Reds and Montas on Oakland. We know the Cubs are going to clean house to whatever degree they can, which is mostly Wilson Contreras and Ian Happ and David Robertson, who I think Robertson would be a great fit for the Mets. The Mets want a catcher in Contreras. What would they have to give up to get him? Certainly that's an electric bat from the right side of the plate that could help. We'll see. I think the Mets are definitely going to boost the bullpen up. They have to do that at the trade deadline. Like I said, I think Robertson is a perfect fit for them as a guy who gets left-handed hitters out and can be in that setup role leading up to Diaz. Andrew Chafin is someone who was, I think, on people's radars in the offseason. He signed with the Tigers, and he's had a good year in Detroit. Not a team that's going anywhere, so they'll probably look to move him. Maybe the Mets are in the market for a guy like that. We'll see. I think it will certainly be bullpen enhancements and possibly another bat. I don't know that they're going to make a huge splash. I don't know that they're going to trade the farm for Soto. I don't know that anyone will. I wouldn't be surprised if Soto was still a National next week. He doesn't have to get traded right now. There's still time to do that. So, as far as the huge move, maybe that does look like a Wilson Contreras.
Right.
But otherwise, I don't know if the Mets are going to be looking to make a spectacular move. I don't know if they need it outside of enhancing the bullpen and just getting another bat.
Right. And as far as the back go, the Sox, or Red Sox, I should say, have, really kind of stumbled the last month or so. Do you think someone like JD Martinez could be, a fit as far as, what a trade could look like? And obviously, he's an older player, but we know he's, productivity, especially from the right hand side, could be something that'd be great for the DH spot. I was just kind of curious there what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I mean, JD Martinez, Boston's really fallen apart here, and they've dropped to last in the American League East. And I know in JD Martinez's case, he's a free agent at the end of this season.
Right.
He's having a good year. He's still hitting the ball pretty hard. He's not exactly hitting the home runs that he used to hit. Right. So I don't know what's going on with him with regard to that. I think he's had a lot of doubles, but not many homers this year. But yeah, I think he's still somebody that you could look at to make that kind of move. Certainly a guy with playoff experience and who's been in some big games in his career. I think, a guy like Martinez or a Mancini, or if you use Contreras, if you look at him as a DH more than as a catcher, I still wonder what the market looks like for Josh Bell, because I think he's a really good fit for them. Although, you got Vogelbach now from the left side, and Bell would switch hit. So, it'll be interesting to see what direction they go in for a bat. But I think that in Bell's case, he would certainly work. Any of those guys we just mentioned would be good fits for the lineup. So I think they'll do something, and we'll find out what that is by the end of business on Tuesday.
Yeah, definitely. And, Wayne, before I let you go, obviously, I'm sure you and Harry are looking forward to hopefully, calling postseason games this year. But outside of that, I was wondering if there was any series, anything, the last couple of months of the season that you're kind of like, especially looking forward to call or, call a game or anything like that. I was just curious.
No, no, just I think that looking forward to just pennant race baseball. Really, I mean, the Braves games are all going to be fun. The last weekend of the regular season, the Mets play in Atlanta, so that will be that could be a huge series. Watching this team try to win the division, and then probably calling playoff games, which would we haven't done in a long time. Mets haven't been in the playoffs since that wild card game in
Yep.
16, and you haven't had any, really playoff series since
Yeah.
2015. So it's been a bit, and 15 was my first year around the team. So it's been several years now. So we're just looking forward to seeing what those atmospheres and those games will be like, and see if the Mets can make a deep run. You look at around the National League, and obviously the Mets and Dodgers and Braves are probably the three best teams. But San Diego's good,
Right.
certainly capable of winning a playoff series. I think the Brewers are as well. You never know what the Cardinals get into October and can do. So, it's not going to be, even if you go in as a favorite, it's going to be tough. You're going to have to play some games that are going to leave people's stomachs in knots, and whether you pull them out or not is what will help you advance or not. So. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know that, and we'll be ready to call those games when they get here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all ready for that knot in our stomach for postseason baseball. It'll be nice to feel that. We're excited to listen to you the rest of the way here. Thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you maybe at the end of the regular season for being in a postseason run here. But everyone tune in next week. We'll have everything, from the latest from the trade deadline and everything going on. But until then, let's go Mets.
All right, sounds good.